Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is up? Welcome to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on a Friday today here. Actually, a little reshuffling of the schedule due to the holiday in the middle of the week, but we are here on a Friday doing this show for you. As we're going to talk about, I don't know, you're like, Tom, what are performance variables? What does that have to do with fantasy? Well, you know, guys have been talking about this for a while, is that there's a lot of different things that have to happen or should happen, or, you know, football, obviously, a lot of things figure themselves out, but there's a lot of outside factors that can affect your favorite fantasy players. And we talked a lot about offensive line play. We talked a lot about line play in general. We talk about quarterback play, whether you have a receiver who has a mediocre quarterback or a receiver who has a legendary quarterback. I mean, sometimes it does average out a little bit, obviously, but we're going to go through each segment and talk about different performance variables and how they can affect them. Obviously, certain players are going to get highlighted throughout the show here as we go along today. I mean, probably in this first, I mean, obviously we have our skill, all the fantasies, it's all skill players. So we have running backs, quarterbacks, I mean, receivers. The big ones are receivers rely on your quarterback a lot, and obviously a lot of variables. So I mean, we go through different guys that we like and think about what can affect them to, you know, have either an up year or a down year, or can just kind of change up their, maybe change your outlook on that player specifically, and maybe makes them more draftable or less draftable, or whether you're trying to get them in a different stage in the draft. We'll figure that out as we go along here, and we'll try and do some, I don't know, give some advice or give some friendly knowledge to each other as we go along here in this show. But I mean, starting off, I know we talked a lot about, like I said, offensive lines can affect your running backs. You've seen sometimes you have running backs like a Kareem Hunt where it doesn't matter sometimes, and he'll just run, and then eventually it'll catch up to him, and he'll end up having kind of a lull in the middle of the year, which is not the worst thing in the world fantasy wise. I mean, yeah, you have two running back spots. You can move it around depending how your team is figured out. But I mean, it's just the guy who just jumps off the page for me right now. As far as this coming season, the one guy I want to really key on, and the fact that I'm keying on him for two reasons, and these are variables. One of them is, and that's Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara, everybody thinks, oh, first-round talent, no problem, no worries. And yeah, he was drafted really late. He was a sleeper last year. Yeah, he had 1 year where he was really, really good out of the backfield. They ran a lot of two-back sets. They split the defense a lot. I mean, both those guys were having crazy years, and you had to have a guy dedicated to each one of them, or try and play a zone the best you could. And it was really difficult for teams to do that against the Saints because you had Ingram and Kamara. So Kamara's not going to have Mark Ingram for the first 4 weeks. Not really going to. I mean, you can obviously, if you have Kamara on your fantasy team, you probably can figure it out for those first 4 weeks. If he does have a couple down games, it's just one player. It's not going to make or break your week. But I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see. What if he's crazy good? What if he's like, I'm going to get all the touches. I'm going to eat. It's not even going to matter. I'm just going to keep playing well at the top of my game, even if there isn't a Mark Ingram here. Even though I think Mark did make him very good, they were able to run a lot. They ran play action and had Kamara out wide, or had him run a wheel route or something like that. Or he was like fake. There were so many different plays, so many different things you could do with those two guys, and the fact they were having big years like that, and they were getting their own kind of, you know, pedigree themselves, carries and stuff like that, getting their own yards on that. They were able to play off each other as well. Because Sean Payton, I'm going to leave it to Sean Payton to figure out how to use two hot running backs. And hot running backs, I mean, like guys that are both playing at the top of their game at that point. Kamara obviously being the young kid. I mean, he's probably my age or closer to it, and we'll see. I'm kind of what have you done for me lately? Yeah, it was a great year last year. It was kind of we've seen it happen before where it's a 1 year kind of one hit wonder guy. I don't think he's like that. He's just got too many skills, and that's probably why he's so far up draft boards. We've seen his obviously the agility to be able to cut and move. Got to stay healthy, though. I mean, maybe the wear and tear. I don't think. Fortunately, it's 4 games. Obviously, the beginning of the season, it's not going to happen mid-season, or maybe he already is banged up a little bit, and then Ingram goes out, and he's got to really take the lion's share of his carries. And when he's already banged up, no, it's the beginning of the year. It's first 4 weeks. We could look at the Saints' schedule in a minute here and try and see if it's like going to be anything tough sledding. I mean, the Patriots are going to be without Julian Edelman for 4 weeks. They don't really have, I mean, they have a Kevin Hogan, but that's about it. I mean, I think actually they get Jordan Matthews over from Buffalo, but that's about it. And then obviously, I mean, they didn't have Edelman. I don't think that's going to be probably a different kind of loss, obviously, because it's a running back versus a receiver. But the Patriots had injuries all last year. Edelman had injuries, and they still made the Super Bowl. So I mean, that's just that division. Another variable of fantasy, depending on which divisions matter, because you play all those teams twice. So the Patriots, like the thing about the Patriot players, you're playing the Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo's defense actually is pretty good. The Jets and the Dolphins, and one of those you're gonna get a game in there where your player's probably gonna go off in there. So that's another. We'll get to that eventually. Schedule and how it can actually help you. Obviously, there's lots of skills. We're like, oh, don't draft the same guys who are in the bye week. Oh, blah blah blah. Like, don't keep that. And yeah, that's your run of the mill fantasy stuff. We'll leave that on the table. But I like talking about the stuff that is really going to affect each player. And obviously, the fact that Kamara is not going to be without Mark Ingram really is interesting to me this season. It's really, really, really compelling, and it's going to be. I think it's going to. I mean, 3 things can happen. Obviously, you can go off. We could just take all these carries and just start going off. He could get hurt because of the fact that not hurt like physically, but it could hurt his stats. The fact that he doesn't have this other guy for the defense to worry about. He's the only guy out there really for the defense to worry about when it comes to running the ball. Are they going to really use him more out of the backfield, or is the fact that Ingram's not there going to hurt his effectiveness out of the backfield catching the ball? That's going to be all my question marks going into the season for Mark Ingram. And then Kamara, the effective Mark Ingram being gone. I think that the other key, obviously, for the Saints is the fact that they figured out their offensive line. They got Ryan Ramczyk in there. Really solidifies it. What a draft they had last season, prior to last season. I mean, you hit on every single pick. You got Marcus Lattimore, you got Kamara, and you got Ryan Ramczyk. Bing, bang, bang, and that's your first round. That's your first 3 rounds right there. Kamara was the last pick. He was a 3rd round pick, by the way. It's just crazy. As far as it goes, when it comes to other players, not named Alvin Kamara, who might be affected a little bit. You can think about a Patriots receiving core, whether a Chris Hogan becomes a little more, or Jordan Matthews becomes a little more attractive, because Tom Brady doesn't care who he throws the ball to. He throws the ball who's open. And honestly, I think that Jordan Matthews he's not up the draft boards right now. We did the mock drafts last week. We'll have to do one at the end of the show today. We haven't done it in a while. Or not that long, but kind of a while. And he's not really that high up the boards. There's lots of receivers who are way above him, but I think he's been severely underrated because of the fact that he's going to have a Tom Brady. There's no Edelman for the first 4 weeks. You're at basically Chris Hogan and him. And who else do they have on there? Who's Gronkowski. That's about it. I mean, it's not terrible, honestly. Gronk's good for himself. Chris Hogan's made a name for himself. And Jordan Matthews actually has had success, fantasy-wise, in Philadelphia with lesser quarterbacks than Tom Brady. I think he actually had a good year with Nick Foles, when Nick Foles was going crazy under the Chip Kelly regime there in Philly. So, I mean, whether you're going to have a situation where he's going to be kind of lost, and nobody's ever really going to find out about him until after week 1, then so be it. But I mean, I'm telling you now, Jordan Matthews. Look at that. I know I was like, oh, what about Rashad Matthews? No, Rashad Matthews, yeah, it's great, but he's good. He's good too. I mean, I always getting confused, but it's it's all you got to look at the variables, performance variables. Who's not playing? Who's not playing? Where's the void in this in the offense? Who's going to get more touches? Obviously, we always looked at that when a running back gets hurt. Okay, who's his backup? Like I know when back in the day when Jamal Charles was the big running back in the NFL, getting all these touches, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, Jamal Charles!" and he gets hurt. Okay, who's his backup? It was Jacandrick West or Spencer Ware or something like that. So they went off in fantasy, and that's going to happen every year. We're going to find out who the guy is. This year, it's actually somebody who's not going to have to worry about somebody getting hurt. I think it's going to be Matt Breida for the Niners, who look at the variables. He's not. This is actually kind of the opposite. He's getting another player. It's going to be the same kind of deal as you have with Kamara and Ingram in New Orleans. Sorry, in New Orleans, where now he's actually getting another player. He's going to have an outside variable with him. This is Breida. I'm changing. I know I'm bouncing around players here, but we're going. This is now player number 3. So we said first was Kamara. Pay attention. First was Kamara. Second was Jordan Matthews. Jordan Richards is not who I'm talking about. He's a defensive player for the Patriots. Go Bulldogs, by the way. He's a Bulldog, like me. And they but then Jordan Matthews, Alvin Kamara, and now I'm on my third player, which is Matt Breida, who I know is going to be way down your draft boards, but he's a running back, very fast. He's going to be now. He's in second year in the Kyle Shanahan system. Kyle Shanahan's going to be on the same level, I think, as Sean Payton by the end of his career when it comes to innovating offenses and creating situations for running backs to be successful, whether it's catching the ball out of the backfield or just having some good running schemes to be able to get yardage out on the carries. So Matt Breida. Look out for him, and I've already been. You guys know already how high I am on Jerick McKinnon coming over to the Niners. Loving that, but everybody, Matt Breida. That's going to be that's more of like the opposite of what I've been talking about, where somebody's going to be gone. It's somebody going to be there. He had Carlos Hyde last year, and they were actually not bad playing off each other. I didn't mind. It wasn't that bad. But now with Jimmy Garoppolo and the way I think they're going to run that offense, they can do a lot of 2-back sets with those two guys. They can have them flank Jimmy and have Kamara. Have McKinnon go out for a run. You can watch McKinnon become the next Alvin Kamara, even though he's older than him and has been in the league longer. But fantasy wise, on the same stage and level of notoriety. And then Matt Breida could be that Mark Ingram where they have the speed, but he's also got the power to kind of have a little change of pace to whatever you're trying to do on offense, running the ball wise. Obviously you're going to also have Jimmy Garoppolo, who has. I've been seeing. That's probably we're going to get to the next segment with these performance variables. But I just wanted to key on these 3 players because 2 of them, I'm really interested in seeing how they're going to perform without certain players. Everybody knows who. I picked one who everybody knows, Alvin Kamara, and I picked one who maybe not everybody knows. People know maybe from when he was playing with the Eagles, and he had some good numbers with Nick Foles, and I think they had who else did they? He played with Carson Wentz a little bit maybe, but mostly Nick Foles. And back when Chip Kelly was the coach, and then he obviously gets traded to the Bills for. They've been doing a couple trades. They traded for. I don't know. They traded Shane McCoy over there, but they traded him to the Bills for somebody. I can't remember who it was, but they traded him. It was probably nobody, and then the Bills just got him from the Patriots. Look at the Patriots. They have a tendency to do that. They grab players from the Bills that even in their own division. They're able to take ex-players. I think Kevin Hogan was an ex-Bills player on the practice squad that ended up coming over, and Bill Belichick turned him into. Honestly, when you give a receiver the best quarterback in the world, he's going to be just fine. But no, I think Jordan Matthews with Tom Brady is going to be a fantasy must-have by the end of Week 1 because you're gonna know. They probably play some team in the big. It looks like actually the Bills and the Jets in that division should give them trouble. They have good defenses, but Brady just figures it out. He usually will lose a game against them, whether it's going to be home or on the road in Buffalo or in New York, but New York City. Well, not New York City, New Jersey, actually, to be more specific, because Buffalo is in New York. But then actually, the New York Giants and Jets don't play. They play in New Jersey. But that's just semantics, Tom. This is not about where the stadiums are, Tom. Okay, fine. All right, this segment's almost over. We're going to come back in after the break and talk about, I know I said Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm going to bring up some more performance variables, some more things to watch out for when you are drafting your fantasy teams. I know I've talked about quarterbacks and how they could be kind of a dime a dozen. You'll figure out your quarterback as you go along, and you can mix and match them. But I want to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo and a couple other guys who have had some positive reinforcement over the last few years, but still have something to prove. So we'll come back and do that when we come back after the break. Stay tuned.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on a Friday today here. A little different day because of the holiday in the middle of the week, but it's all right. We're still here talking some fantasy football for you guys as we are going through some of the variables affecting our favorite fantasy players. And I want to talk about one guy who's maybe not quite our favorite yet because there's a lot of guys who are out there who are really good, but for a guy who started a handful of games in the NFL, started 5 last year, for the San Francisco 49ers, won all 5 of them. That's Jimmy Garoppolo. He's already up to number 10 in the quarterback rankings on Fantasy Pros. Is that what it was? When I was doing my mock drafts, he was constantly up there getting picked. I mean, he's going to get picked. Obviously, he's a guy who's going to throw an accurate ball. I mean, he's got a good zip on it. Has a little bit of trouble with the deep ball, but pretty close to what you can see from. I mean, you see a lot of Tom Brady in him. It's very similar. You see the ability to reset your feet, get a new target, and then be able to make marginal receivers look like great receivers. I mean, Trent Taylor last year was a third down machine. I mean, that was his go-to guy on third down last year. And they didn't play. I mean, I don't know. When Tom's a Niner fan, he's just gonna go give a Homer Dome to. He's going to be on Jimmy Garoppolo like that. No, but Jimmy is going to be a fine quarterback in the NFL. But I don't know if he's going to be crazy like he's going to be the GOAT again, Tom Brady. I mean, I know one of the guy, Cassius Marks or whatever it is, his name is, I think it's his name, on the Niners now. He was on the Patriots, and he said that Jimmy used to shred the Patriots' first team defense in practice. So I mean, he obviously having the ability to play under the tutelage of Tom Brady, learn his habits when it comes to watching film, because I think that's Tom Brady. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a better physical specimen than Tom Brady. You know, right? He's a better arm. He could run he'd run faster. He run better. You can look at Russell Wilson, same kind of thing. But Tom Brady, the one thing is better than anybody else is the ability to read a defense pre-snap, and being able to get that into Jimmy Garoppolo's mind, and how that ability is going to be crazy. Obviously, when you get into a situation with quarterbacks, fantasy-wise, yeah, you're like, okay, you're splitting hairs, really. Brady scores 20, averages 24 again. I mean, you're going from I'm just based off 25 is a decent score. He averages 24, 25 a game. Aaron Rodgers averages 24, 25, 26 a game. I mean, it's really, what do you do, Matt? I mean, I ran with Matt Stafford last year, and Ben Roethlisberger was fine. Made playoffs, won my league. I mean, obviously, having Todd Gurley is helpful, but it's not quarterbacks. Yeah, you have to have good things around you, unless you're Tom Brady. But he does have good coaching around him. It's a little bit lacking in the receiving area, except for Gronk. But even without Gronk, they still seem to win. They don't really need Gronk. With the Niners, I think it's going to be a situation where you didn't really get anything bigger. You didn't really get Allen Robinson. You did not get Allen Robinson. So no variable there, outside variable for Jimmy there. He's going to be with the same guys he had last year. He's going to have a new running back. That's going to be the one thing. That's what actually was taking forever to get to. That's what I wanted to talk about, was the fact that Jimmy's going to have Jerick McKinnon for the first time. And that is got to be probably one of the bigger matchup, better combinations on offense that I want to see coming out to this season, because, I mean, they're both dynamic players. I mean, the fact that you have a guy like Jimmy who has the pinpoint accuracy that he's been able to show, and then having a guy like Jerick McKinnon who's shown the ability to be elusive and get open in space and be a mismatch for linebackers and safeties out of the backfield, you're going to have a hell of a lot of good plays in fantasy football. A lot of good plays, a lot of good points. I mean, both those guys are going to help each other. The quarterback, I mean, the coaching. I mean, we can even go there. That's probably be on another segment eventually. I'm talking about just coaching in general, how that can help your fantasy player, because you have obviously offensive-minded and defensive-minded coaches. So when you think about a quarterback who is going to be, you want to talk about volume and just sheer numbers and volume, and about how many times he's going to drop back and have an opportunity to score for you. Because, I mean, that's the thing. That's where the game of chance kind of comes into fantasy, where you have Matt Stafford, and you know that the Lions like to throw the ball a lot, but now they have a defensive coach. They have Matt Patricia now. Are they still going to throw the ball 30, 40, 50 times a game? Well, they might still throw 30, but that's about average. 35, 30, 40 dropbacks a game. But there's been games where he's dropped back 50, 60 times a game for stretches. So, I mean, that was with Jim Caldwell, obviously, an offensive-minded coach. You're going to get a defensive-minded coach now back in Detroit. Is that going to affect his numbers? Does that deter you from taking Matt Stafford now? The Niners, they've had some defensive coaches, bad quarterbacks. They get Jim Harbaugh, okay? Colin Kaepernick going to have some opportunity. He ended up being a pretty good fantasy quarterback, Colin Kaepernick did. For the year or two, he was good. But then looking at Jimmy Garoppolo, I think the Niners are going to be a very balanced team. They're also going to probably throw the ball just probably a tick a little more, and he's going to be able to get those easy passes. Because, I mean, PPR for Jerick McKinnon is just... I'm debating picking him in the first round, because I already have another running back. I already have Todd Gurley. I mean, if you're in a keeper league and you're a PPR keeper league and you already have a big receiver, take Jerick McKinnon. Or honestly, or if you already have a big running back, take Jerick McKinnon, because he's going to be a guy who's going to get some serious catches just on the checkdowns, design plays. I mean, watch the highlights for Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman when the Eagles won the NFC Championship and went to the Super Bowl, and we're not going to get into that, but just look at that, and look at Kyle Shanahan's ability to get a receiver or get a running back open in space in the defensive backfield. And he's going to be able to do the same thing in San Francisco with Jimmy Garoppolo, and his accuracy, his pinpoint control with that ball, getting a zip on that ball is just going to be. I mean, I know it's like, oh, Jimmy's going to be. He hasn't shown us enough. I mean, we don't know if he's going to be that good. Is he a bust? Is he overrated? Well, he beat two teams last year that were not done. He actually beat three playoff teams last year. Those 5 games, 3 of them were playoff teams. The Rams were a playoff team. Yeah, they were sitting a bunch of players. The Titans were a playoff team. They weren't. The Jacksonville Jaguars were a playoff team. They weren't sitting players. We beat them. They beat them both. He beat them both. They were fighting for a jockeying for position in the AFC playoff race, whatever, getting the seeding. They both were in the same conference, so they both were trying to win to get to the first place in the division, and get a better seeding in the playoffs. So, I mean, look at the difference. I mean, what if the Jacksonville wins and they play? I mean, Tennessee played Kansas City. Obviously, that may have been more favorable to Jacksonville. I think who Jacksonville played in the first round. I think they played Buffalo, actually. So that was probably didn't really matter. But no, I digress. We're looking back at the playoffs from last year. Not good for an Outlook fantasy show. But no, more guys I want to talk about. I know that you're gonna have to deal with. We're gonna have to see if Ben Roethlisberger can turn it on. The thing is, I always like Ben Roethlisberger, and he's the ultimate variables guy. I mean, he's getting older. He's kind of losing a little bit of a step with maybe his ability to be elusive in the pocket, but he has so many weapons around him. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Juju Smith-Schuster, I mean, even obviously Antonio Brown, we know that, but Juju Smith-Schuster, Antonio Brown, Jesse James, obviously Le'Veon. I mean, they have players all around him, and he's got so many weapons where it's just he's got to get points. They're going to get their points, and when AB gets points, Ben gets points. Kind of how it works. Only time it's like obviously running backs is more it correlates differently, but Ben's going to get points out of Le'Veon too when he throws in the ball to the backfield. I mean, that's why you have a variable where quarterback, where Antonio Brown is a very talented receiver. But Big Ben, those balls are on just teardropped, just dropping from the sky heavens into his breadbasket. I mean, yeah, some of the catches he makes are pretty crazy, but we've seen Odell Beckham make some crazy catches. We've seen other players make it. But Big Ben, he's got probably some of the best touch where he just chucks the ball up there and it drops from the heavens and right in stride with Antonio Brown. That's why they've been able to be so good, because he gets, like I said, I've talked about it before on the show, they have a non-verbal communication where he can just look at him, and if they see a mismatch on the outside, 1-on-1, safety's edging over towards the other side of the field, which I wouldn't know why you would ever do that if you have Antonio Brown playing against you. But he seems to happen. He beats the corner, and all of a sudden he's open on the little seam, on that little pocket on the sideline, and the safety can't go cover his quarter in time. So I mean, it's kind of, unless you're playing a quarters defense where that corner has the receiver all the way up the field, and you have a safety. Obviously, that's why you have play design, and you have a route tree and everything, where you have obviously other routes taking that safety away. So I mean, Big Ben, love Big Ben. Love Big Ben. Doesn't take very many sacks. Doesn't throw. I mean, he throws some. The interceptions can get a little. He'll have games. Obviously, he had a game last year where it was pretty rough, and he threw a bunch of picks. But he's also had games where he'll throw 3 touchdowns and for 400 yards, and no problem, no sweat. I mean, AB will have 3 of them. Hopefully, you're not playing somebody with AB on their team. But I mean, honestly, if there was ever a tandem to pick, if you're gonna have just a choice, if you take AB, if you get a first round pick early, and you take Antonio Brown. Ooh, I would be hard-pressed to take Ben Roethlisberger and get double points, basically. Because they're going to get... Antonio Brown is going to eat. He's going to get his points. That's kind of how it works in fantasy sometimes. It's like an automatic first round. I mean, the only guy I think maybe in the first round that can be a little questionable is Todd Gurley, honestly, because of the fact that he's not shown sustainability in the NFL. But no, I would not be surprised if people do that, or I would not be. I would definitely be encouraging the fact if you pick Antonio Brown, and then obviously you don't need a quarterback, you can just wait till the bitter end, and then get Ben Roethlisberger, and now every time Antonio Brown gets points, Big Ben gets points. I mean, it's kind of like, duh, you can double points every time. So, I mean, obviously, if one of them has a down game, then there's kind of like double whammy. So you kind of roll with the punches there sometimes. So it's like, okay, it's an equation, guys. Why do you think I put variables? It's a lot of it's an Equation. Tom's overthinking fantasy football. It's on. I mean, okay, well, there's points. You got to add up the points, right? How do you think you can predict some things? How do you think you can actually build a smart team? Obviously, like I said, a lot of it can be chance, like volume, amount of carries, everything. You don't know the game plans of these coaches and everything. You also got to be very, very good at getting up in the morning, especially if you live on the West Coast for some of those 10 a.m. games for your teams. I mean, you got to get up and set your lineups too. So there's, like I said, there's always things to worry about in fantasy, always variables that can go into your decision making when you have 2 different guys. So like I said, if you have receivers like I had last year, I was deciding a lot last year between like I'm trying to think here, who are 2 receivers I was deciding between last year a lot. I remember it was Jamison Crowder, and which is not great. And it was Jamison Crowder. No, I didn't have. Yeah, it was Jamison Crowder and like Demaryius Thomas, something like that. And Demaryius Thomas had not that good of a quarterback. And then Jamison Crowder, he was on the Redskins. I mean, he had Kirk Cousins, so it was not terrible. But I mean, it may have been somebody else. It may have been like Deshaun Jackson, who's been kind of lost out in Tampa Bay ever since he went out there. Jameis Winston, obviously, that's something else we'll have to talk about in the next segment. Is of Jameis Winston, is he like dead for fantasy now? Even though like you can probably pick him up, obviously that's how quarterbacks are. He'll get picked up throughout the season, but obviously the first 3 games, no Jameis. So obviously he's off draft boards pretty much, which is not surprising. He's pretty far down the boards, honestly. He hasn't really shown. There's 12 better quarterbacks. Unless you're playing in some 16-man league or you're playing a league with 2 quarterbacks, which is pretty crazy, then I don't think Jameis is going to really factor in that much anyways. But yeah, last year I had to pick between Deshaun Jackson and Demaryius Thomas or something like that or Emmanuel Sanders because of injuries, and I was short, basically. So you're like, okay, who's throwing to who? I mean, it's basically, okay, you got Trevor Siemian or Jameis Winston. And I was kind of like, okay, drop one of them, go pick somebody else up, because it's like, this is not going to work. I know I'm not going to get the volume that I need. Obviously, Jackson obviously is a big catch kind of guy. So okay, one catch might get you. Actually, he can get a 40-yard play, get in the end zone, you're done. He doesn't need to get 10 catches a game to get his points. So, I mean, that's also part of it too. So you can think about that and maybe factor that into your decision making when you're deciding between 2 different players. And obviously, if you still can't make a decision, you just go to fantasypros.com, not a plug, but you should do it and do the who should I start ability. Also, if you pay for it, you can, or if you go on there, you don't have to pay for it, but you can upload your entire lineup into their thing if you sign in with your login for your whatever you use fantasy platform, Yahoo or whatever it is. It'll load your lineup into their playbook thing, and it'll actually put you up against the team you're playing that week, and then show you which are the best matchups for you to exploit that week. So I mean, that's another thing you could do if you don't want to listen to me, but you should listen to me anyways. All right. We'll come back after this break and talk about some more stuff. I know we talked about coaching. I was going to bring up coaching a little bit, so we're doing that when we come back and see how coaching can affect fantasy as it does every year.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on a Friday today here. As we come back and bring in some stuff with coaching, obviously. We don't think about that all the time with fantasy football. You look at, this player is really good, raw talent. Rah. Well, we got to look at how they're going to get the ball. Obviously, these star players are easy. The first 3 rounds, these guys are obviously game planned in to get the ball. I mean, whether it's a running back or a receiver, it doesn't matter. But yeah, these guys are going to get the ball. Whether it's a DeAndre Hopkins or a Michael Thomas or a Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, doesn't matter. We can go from end to end, but there's some other guys who is he actually going to be like part of the offense? A big question mark this year is looking at some of these guys like who you don't think about, like an Albert Wilson or a Brown. Who's the guy on the Cardinals? Brown. He used to be on the Cardinals, but there's all these smaller receivers, some of these secondary running backs. We talked about like backup running backs. Obviously, there's teams who already are planning on running 2 running backs, whether it's a star guy or it's the two mediocre guys. As they planning on running 2 running backs, and you're going to see a lot of split time, and might not be able to get the volume to look at and see what you're going to do. So whether it's like a guy you're going to kind of sit on your bench, what if you find out? Okay, you got to find out Jim Harbaugh, like a John Harbaugh. Like I love Alex Collins. John Harbaugh is the coach of the Ravens. Alex Collins is on the Ravens. Do you think that John Harbaugh is going to run Joe Flacco out there this year and then in turn, because Joe Flacco's getting a little bit on the worse for wear, might give Alex Collins a little bit more of a I don't want to say bulk of the offensive plays. You have so many offensive plays, obviously, and then you can let him just run wild, or you're going to have him run out of the backfield a lot, where they're going to be increasing check downs like that. So maybe you can increase your research. If there's anything you need to do to find a competitive edge, you can do it. You could find something to find a competitive edge that somebody's not doing fantasy wise, and that's looking at coaches, looking at offense or defensive guys. The Raiders just had Jack Del Rio. He's more of a defensive guy. They get John Gruden, more of an offensive guy. Maybe you draft some more Raiders. It's just, it's not. It doesn't even think, okay, first 3 rounds. Okay, now I'm deciding between 2 teams. It's going to help you kind of split the hairs. Whether it's going to be kind of deciding between 2 guys. Obviously, it's even tougher when they're on the same team. The decision between Diggs and Thielen. For some reason, Thielen is way up in the top of the rankings, and Diggs is more in the beginning of the middle kind of area. But, looking at the Vikings, Mike Zimmer's actually more of a defense. I think he's more of a defensive guy, right? But they're going to have Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins doesn't matter. He doesn't care who he throws the ball to. He doesn't really have favorites. He was able to spread the ball around well in Washington, whether it was Jordan Reed or Jamison Crowder or Pierre Garçon when he was there. He can figure it out, and whoever's open, I think that he's going to actually use a lot of. I think who's down this year is I was going to say Zach Randolph. It's Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph, the tight end for the Vikings, very good tight end. He's not a nobody, but he's a little bit down lower in the rankings than you think. I think he's probably 5th or 6th below Evan Ingram and maybe Jimmy Graham, Gronk, and Travis Kelce, and then Zach Ertz, obviously. But don't forget about Kyle Rudolph. I think that Kirk Cousins, especially in the red zone, loves using those tight ends. Him and Jordan Reed, before Jordan Reed got hurt, were bread and butter in the red zone. He plays a really good ball down the seam. So, looking at, I know we're talking about coaches, but looking at just matchups and what quarterbacks like to do, look at tendencies of who has done well. Especially with players changing teams, like a Kirk Cousins going to the Vikings, who does Kirk Cousins like to throw the ball to? Well, he doesn't really have a preference. So look at his numbers with Washington. He threw a lot to the tight end in the red zone. Okay, well, maybe the Kyle Rudolph, that Vikings offense is going to be very good. They're going to get their fair share of time in the red zone this year. You might want to think about taking a Kyle Rudolph, because he's going to get his fair share of opportunities to catch a ball in the end zone. I think, especially with his ability to get open in space and box out, and his size. This guy's not small. He's a big tight end. So, I think Kirk Cousins is going to love having that weapon like he did in Washington. But a healthy guy. Jordan Reed had injury issues. That might be what we talk about in the next segment. But watch out for injuries and a tendency. Obviously, every year we have a guy who. Football, it's a collision sport. You have collisions and tweaks and people rolling up on you or whatever it might be. There can be issues all over the place. So whether you're going to be looking at a guy who's had injury issues in the past, or a guy who you just pray that he's coming off. If he's coming off an injury, you pray that he's all right. But not make it through the whole season. Obviously, we have our IR for a reason. But I know there's a lot of speculation. Like, Tom, we're going to turn our roster over 2 times before the season's over. It's true. You have your first 3 guys. Like I said, your first 3 or 4 guys are usually locked, or 3 guys are locked in, right? So, you have the ability to decide whether you're going to, run with a team that you are feeling like you want to turn over, or less maintenance team. We're going to do a lot of research prior and do before the draft versus throughout the season. Obviously, it's great to fill it out during the season and see what's going on in front of you. You can't just take my word for it and be like, oh, just look at his coach and look at what the coach likes to do and look at his look at the quarterback and his stats. I'm okay, because obviously for running backs, a lot of it's going to be like, okay, how many touches, how many carries do they get a game? That's decided by the coach. For receivers, obviously certain plays are actually designed for certain receivers. Obviously, that's why the big receivers get a lot of plays, because they design them to get open. And they get a lot of points, obviously, like catches. But there's also situations where you have to have a quarterback, whether it's your second or third, your third or fourth receiver, if you're looking for a flex guy or something like that, and he's maybe not the best he's a number 2 receiver on his team or something like that, or maybe even a number 3 for you obviously want to look at the quarterback. The thing is, obviously, Aaron Rodgers All of his receivers are worth having on your fantasy team. Geronimo Allison's worth having on your team. I mean, Jimmy Graham, obviously Jimmy Graham, but then Randall Cobb and Devontae Adams. I mean, Devontae Adams is just all of a sudden becoming one of the best players in football because he's been able to rise to the talent that is required of an Aaron Rodgers receiver. And when you do that, Aaron Rodgers is going to make you look very, very good because he's going to put the ball where you want it to be. All you got to do is catch it. Just get open and catch the ball. I know it's much easier said than done, but you have to know that Aaron is obviously going to be making all of his receivers better. So, they're a lot more draftable. I mean, what do you think Jordy Nelson's draft slot goes down a little bit because he just left Aaron Rodgers and is going to Derek Carr? Taking nothing away from Derek Carr. He's not Aaron Rodgers, obviously, but he's still a very, very good quarterback in this league. I just don't think that Jordy Nelson, losing his step, getting a little bit older, you're not going to be able to throw him open as much. Derek Carr doesn't really do that as much anyways. I mean, compared to Aaron Rodgers, he does it a little bit. But, I mean, it could be affecting. It could be all different things. Like I said, changing teams is a huge deal. I know we talked about kind of coaches and changing teams, whether it's going to be looking at different matchups created through those team changes, whether it's like a Martavis Bryant. I like that better. Martavis is a younger player. He's a little more athletic. He's going to get the ball, go out and get the ball. He's not coming off an injury like a Jordy Nelson. So, I mean, he's definitely a guy who I think is going to be a little bit better. I think I would definitely draft Martavis before Jordy Nelson. Absolutely. I mean, that's pretty easy, especially when you're looking at two guys who are on the same team with a more offensive coach now. And I mean, this is a situation where you're going to be able to exploit that change of coach and change of player as well. So, as far as it goes with some of the more of these variables, I know we talked about, just looking at different things. Don't look at this like, oh, he was crazy last year, he went off. Look at everything. Look at their line. Look at the kind of coach it is. Look at the quarterback. Look at how much do you think coming off injury is going to get his touches? Is he going to get the same volume of carries? Everything. Is he more of can he catch the ball to the backfield? Obviously, if you're looking at PPR versus non-PPR, it's going to change it. Everything changes. Performance variables are all over the place. I mean, this doesn't apply for everybody. I'm not saying this is everybody's like, oh, DeAndre Hopkins has a lot of performance variables. Well, I mean, you saw last year they don't really apply to him because he's able to put the same kind of, well, not the same exact kind of numbers, but equally pretty good numbers with Deshaun Watson, who was electric last year, versus not Deshaun Watson after he got hurt. So I mean, basically, you have guys who are kind of variable proof kind of thing. They're just going to still, like Antonio Brown, they have enough plays designed for him where Landry Jones probably can throw to him, or whether it's going to be Mason Rudolph. I mean, we'll find out. That's down the road. I think that Ben Roethlisberger, some of the throws you watch him make, the guy can drive to the ball down the field over the middle. He can put it on a freaking plate to a running back in the flat, and he could put it on a dime over the shoulder of a receiver down the sideline on a little feather pass. So, I mean, the guy's got touch, he's got drive. I mean, this is a Hall of Fame quarterback, 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback for a reason. And he's got so many weapons. And talk about the weapons, that's a variable. Having players around you is a variable. Makes, I think, Ben Roethlisberger, with the fact that he has so many opportunities to score. It's not just, he's getting older, he's just a quarterback. He has opportunity. That's why I don't understand why Russell Wilson. I know because he is his own opportunity to score, and with his legs. I understand that. That's probably why one of the only reasons why he's higher up in the rankings. And a lot of all the quarterbacks who are up there, except for like Brady and Rodgers, are mobile and are going to have rushing yards. I mean, Aaron Rodgers actually averages probably 15, 20 rushing yards a game, which is 2 more points for you. That's why they love rushing yards in fantasy, because it's more valuable. It's definitely a variable you can think about when drafting a quarterback. If you really value those rushing yards, you need every point, because they only have to run 10 yards to get a point versus throwing the ball 25 yards to get a point. So you can definitely look at the premium at the fact that rushing is more of a premium. When it comes to those running quarterbacks, obviously, do it at your own risk, because they do tend to get hurt a lot. You have to give that credit to Russell Wilson for being able to stay healthy as much as he can. But you have guys who are more mobile versus guys who are not, and you're gonna have your decision making. Obviously, I just love Big Ben because you don't think about it all the time. Okay, Big Ben has opportunities to score with his arm a lot, and again, it's going to get in the end zone and the red zone a lot. I mean, look at how many touchdowns the guy threw last year. I mean, I can a lot. I mean, he's got weapons. You got to feed AB. You got to feed Juju. You got to feed Le'Veon Bell if you're going to let him catch out the backfield. It's another completion. I mean, that's yards right there, especially for all those screen plays they run. I like Big Ben. I might actually end up picking him late in the draft this year because I don't think anybody's going to end up picking him. I'm just going to roll with him all year. I know he has bad days, but I mean he's got too many weapons to go on a slump. He can't go. He's basically slump proof because he has so many plays that can just be made for him. Whether it's Le'Veon just getting open, or it's Antonio Brown running like a little slant route or a bubble screen. I mean, it's just boom, completion, boom, yards. So, all right, that'll wrap it up for this segment. We'll come back and finish it up with some stuff about talk a little bit about injuries and how to get around those in fantasy, as well as more and more. There's always variables to think about on the outside as well. So I'm talking about different positions as we go along here throughout the show. So stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast here, as we are going to finish up the show with a little segment on the guys to watch out for, whether it's injuries or just be careful kind of as it come back. But I mean, Carson Wentz is the only guy that I'm really thinking that is going to be fine as he works his way back from the injury. Deshaun Watson is a little bit more worrisome for me because of the fact that this is now his second injury with that knee. He had an injury in college, but he's coming. I think it was the other knee actually, but he's shown ability to come back and been able to rehab quickly. These guys are young and they bounce back quickly. They heal fast, and sometimes it can be kind of wary to find out that they were rushed back. Obviously, having an off season is not going to rush back, but maybe trying to play week one isn't always in your best interest if you get re-injured. But I feel like Carson Wentz is more of a sure bet when it comes to drafting somebody, because I think actually both of them are going to be producers, obviously, if they're healthy. They both have weapons on the outside. They both have the ability to run and score points themselves with their legs. Carson Wentz, I think, is going to be a little bit more in the pocket this year. I think they're really going to focus on that. Maybe probably for both of them, actually. The injuries might end up making them more passers. I don't think that the Texans are going to really force Deshaun Watson to stay in the pocket. He's just got too much talent using his legs to get to the outside. So, I mean, that probably won't change. But Carson Wentz, I would not be surprised knowing the fact that the Eagles just coming off a Super Bowl victory without him and trying to do it again with him and have him actually be healthy the whole season. I think they probably would have done it with him anyways if he was healthy with that roster. Oof. But, I mean, just knowing that he is a different kind of body type. I mean, looking at them, Deshaun Watson, obviously, he's not as thick. He's a little tall. They're both pretty tall, both like 6'3", 6'4". But Carson Wentz is a little more built up, I think, and just, that makes me feel a little better when it comes to staying healthy after you heal up your injury. I mean, it's a knee. There are little ligaments in there, and they could tear up rather easily. You saw how on a non-contact injury, it was done to Carson Wentz, just a bad step, and that's all it took. So just be careful on those guys. I would if deciding between two, I would take Wentz over. He's got more game experience. Anyways, we don't know. I mean, the fact that Deshaun Watson is an automatic great player automatically, but he won 4 games and then got hurt, and Jimmy Garoppolo won 5 games. Sorry, I'm fanning, but it's okay. He threw 19 touchdown passes. He threw more touchdown passes than Joe Flacco did all year in 4 games. So yeah, we know that. Was it 4 games? Or maybe in 6. It may have been 6 games, but they only won like 4 of them. They didn't win all the games he played in. But fantasy wise, they both have weapons. You just got to take. I think Deshaun Watson's probably just got to take the dive. I don't think his. I mean, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. Honestly, it depends. We gotta watch him. We gotta watch him in training camp. We gotta see how he comes back. He seems like he's okay. He's on Twitter. He's on rah-rah on the Rockets when they were going through their playoff run, but that's done, obviously. But no, he's got to see how he's going to come back and how they're going to work him in preseason, because you're not going to draft until after that. Anyways, as just trying to get through your draft, there's lots of quarterbacks out there. Like I said, Big Ben. I would take Big Ben because all the weapons around him. He's going to get his points because they have to get their points, and that's kind of how it works with fantasy. Where, I mean, if you have a quarterback who's going to be able to have weapons, he's going to have weapons on the outside to get the ball to, and they're going to score. I mean, every point that Antonio Brown gets is, unless it's an end around or something like that, which they actually do run that. They actually run that play, which is fine. But he's really going to get all through the air. It's going to be all through the air. It's going to be all from Big Ben, barring any injuries. Big Ben's a tough guy anyways. But I mean, I love the fact that Big Ben has the touch that he has the connection and chemistry with his receivers that he has. The fact that he's been able to take Juju and push a 19-year-old, 20-year-old like that into the forefront of the NFL and make him into a great receiver. He's got the sky's the limit for Juju Smith-Schuster. So I mean, that's why they probably were a little more comfortable with trading away Martavis Bryant, because you have the trust in the fact that you have a young receiver who's already shown ability to succeed in the NFL well. And when you get that, it's pretty hard for him to. I mean, he's probably going. I don't know if he's going to regress, but he's not really going to go that far backwards. He's going to either progress because he's got Big Ben, he's got a Hall of Fame quarterback throwing him the ball, or he'll just stay where he was last time, which I mean wasn't that bad anyways. But he had like 6 or 7 touchdowns last year, which is pretty good for a rookie season. So looking at the Steelers in general. Their defense is probably the thing that needs to be the most help, so maybe I'll be afraid of the fact. That's actually something I forgot to mention. You want the ball as an offense. As a player on fantasy, you want your players to have the ball. Obviously, you want them to score, so they're not always going to have the ball, but you want offenses to be clicking, and you want defenses to get off the field. So a nice defense if that's going to be a bonus. It's not like, oh, I'm picking him over him because his defense is better and he's going to be on the field more. No, that's not what I'm saying. But it is a bonus. It's a nice little bonus variable to add into everything in your decision making, whether it's going to be players off of. I mean, the thing is, all this stuff I'm talking about here isn't just for the draft. It's also for picking players off waivers. Because that's kind of like draft 2.0, where you have to pick between 2 different guys. I mean, you're not on a timer, but you already know, okay, I'm going to drop this guy. Now I got to pick who I want. Do I need this position, or there's 2 guys who I could pick that, okay, this guy plays this team. Obviously, week to week, I am huge on the week to week matchups. Like, they're playing the Rams, so their defense is pretty good. Maybe we shouldn't start them or shouldn't pick them up. Oh, they're playing they're playing the Dolphins. Oh, their defense isn't that good. Okay, well, let's pick them up. So, I mean, or the points against, have the little, Yahoo does this, where they'll have a color, and it'll be like green means that it's a good matchup. The team they're playing gives up a lot of points at that position. Yellow is medium, and red's like, no, they don't give up any points to this position. So I do that. I do that. That's something I definitely will take advantage of on Yahoo. For those who use the Yahoo Fantasy Football service, definitely I would definitely take advantage of that, because it's a key function. It's definitely useful because you like to know the matchups, and that's definitely a variable that can be in play. But looking at at the beginning when you're either drafting or you're picking somebody up waivers, how much are they going to be on the field? The last thing I hate, the most thing I hate the most is when I go on my fantasy team and check my roster on a Sunday, and none of the players have the offenses on the field. For every single team that I have, for the players that I have, all the teams' defenses, they're all playing defense. I mean, it's just ridiculous sometimes. Like, get off the field. So obviously a team with a nice defense like the Jaguars, so maybe Leonard Fournette, you might want to value him a little higher, but there's definitely players all over the place who can definitely benefit off of the defense on their team being very good, getting off the field, getting them the ball back, or the opportunity to score, to have the ball and get some yards and get some points for you. Because I mean, there's nothing better than garbage points. Honestly, garbage time points in fantasy, it's hilarious because it goes both ways. Either you're going to get benefited, or you're going to be on the other side of it, the negative side of it, because it's just it's pretty funny actually when you have players. Oh, I'm down by 2 points. I just need the game's already over. I just need a garbage carry. Oh, they kneeled it. Oh, I lost by 2. Okay, or I'm up by 3 points. Oh, all they need is a kneel down. The game's almost over. Oh, they run it for 10 yards or 20 yards and a touchdown. It doesn't matter. Garbage points. Hilarious. So also another thing, if your team is playing a crummy team, if the player you have is playing a crummy team, you better hope he scores a bunch in the first half or second half, because he might either come out or he might either get lost and they might blow him out, and they're not going to run it anymore, not going to pass anymore, and that's the problem. Also, the way the game goes, I mean, especially if your team jumps out to a lead and they want to be more conservative, the receivers on that team aren't going to be as utilized. So there's also game by game variables you have to take. Well, you have to take into account, of course, when you're starting, because you have no idea what's going to happen. But if you could try and predict the gameplay, obviously, I mean, say you have a player on either team that you don't really care then, because whoever is on offense is going to be good for you. But I mean, it's just there's lots of different things taken into account. Like I said, it's not just about the draft; it's also after the draft. Like I said, half of you guys, or most of you guys, are going to have your lineups turn over. At least mine turns over at least once by the end of the year. Except for half the team, probably half the roster probably turns over by the end of the year, usually. So I mean, you have a lot of guys you're going to be picking up off waivers, and you can use these variables and little tips I'm giving throughout that time as well. All right, that'll wrap it up for the show today, as we'll come back on Tuesday next week and give you some more fantasy football stuff, as we'll send you off for a nice weekend. Everybody out there, enjoy the weather wherever you are. Or if it's bad weather, stay inside. I don't know where you are. But it's nice here as we sign off for the weekend. So everybody, we'll talk to you on Tuesday. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.